Okay. I'm opening this meeting. Good afternoon. This meeting is called to order. For the record, the time is 1:30 p.m. The date is October 7th, 2025. The commission and staff are appearing from Helena, Montana in the Bollinger Room of the Montana Public Service Commission. I am Brad Molnar. I am the presiding chairman for this meeting. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For the record, the following commissioners are present. We have Commissioner Wellborn, Commissioner Panucci, Commissioner Bukacek, of course, myself, and Commissioner Fielder is excused. Public comment. The Public Service Commission welcomes any comment on any item that is on today's agenda or any matter that is within the jurisdiction of the Public Service Commission. Are there any public commenters in the room? Seeing none. Are there any public commenters online? We have two. Mr. Hepp, you can go first. Would you please state your name, spell your last name for the record, please. Do not give us your home address. Mr. Hepp, are you with us? We can circle back to Mr. Hepp. Also online is Commissioner Jill Kringstad of North Dakota. Commissioner Kringstad, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Thank you.
Perfect.
Please
So
spell your last name.
for the record, my name is Jill Kringstad. My last name is spelled Kringstad.
Thank you.
Good
Now,
afternoon.
Just for the record here, normally we do not allow questions and answers during public comment, but it's taken 3 weeks to get Jill here, and it's an extremely large issue, and it's getting bigger all the time. So at the end, we will allow 5 or 10 minutes for commissioners to ask questions if there's a significant interest. We've been told that the commissioners from North Dakota and perhaps one or two of the staff might come here and meet with us, so we can go there and meet with them. This issue is spilling over into Montana at a large rate. Please continue, Jill. I apologize for interrupting you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Jill Kringstad, and I'm a commissioner on the North Dakota Public Service Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. One of my duties on the commission is to be North Dakota's liaison to the Regional Transmission Organization, MISO, and the Organization of MISO States, also known as OMS. This was a role my predecessor, Julie Fedorchak, held for many years. One of MISO's functions is to plan long-range transmission for their footprint. MISO estimates $100 billion in new power lines will be needed to meet state and utility goals over the next 20 years. MISO is planning to build these lines in 4 tranches or groups of projects. Late last year, MISO approved a set of projects known as Tranche 2.1 with an estimated cost of $22 billion. These costs are set to be spread across the entire MISO North footprint, including to North Dakota and Montana. North Dakota recognizes the importance of transmission infrastructure, but it must be a prudent investment that balances affordability with the long-term needs of the grid. Transmission costs are rapidly becoming a large portion of utility customer bills, and their costs need to be carefully scrutinized. We believe the benefit calculations used for the projects in Tranche 2.1 are overstated, and the costs are unjust and unreasonable to North Dakota utility customers. In August, we filed a complaint at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, challenging the metrics used to select these projects, and were joined by 4 other states, including Montana. Nothing in the complaint prevents these projects from being built, but requires that states and utilities that benefit from these costs pay for them. I want to thank the Montana Commission for their support on this important case. Our commissions have a long history of collaborating on important issues, including telecom, and if myself, my fellow commissioners, or our staff can ever be a helpful resource, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you again for the Montana Public Service Commission's support on the FERC complaint and for the opportunity to speak today. This concludes my comments.
Thank you, Jill. That was very succinct. I will add to that, might spur some questions because this is Greek to a lot of people. Tranche 1 is complete, is being built out. That's about $10 billion. MDU customers in Montana receive not one spark, not a transmission line, not a distribution line, not even extension cord. That will be $200 million that shows up on their rates. Tranche 2.1, which we're currently involved in, takes up probably 30% of my time here, is $22 billion. Same thing. Nothing for MDU customers other than a bill. Tranche 2.2, 3, and 4 added together, as she alluded to, right now is estimated at $100 billion. I'm not totally drilled down on the granular, but I have not been able to find that MDU customers receive anything other than, upon completion, a $2 billion addition to their rates. Sure, it'll be divided out by 20 years and et cetera. It's $2 billion without a voice. That's why we're in this. So with that, I would open up to staff and to commissioners if they have any questions of Commissioner Kilstead for the, because frankly, I know a lot and it is minuscule to what she knows. So I'd like for her to be able to elucidate. Like I say, if there's a desire for more information, we will meet together, hold a video, whatever it takes. But this is very, very important to the people of Montana. Are there any questions? Commissioner Kilstead, I appreciate your time and your dedication to this issue. Seeing no questions, there might be some that come in after this. I would certainly enjoy working with you on any questions from the commission.
Thank you. That sounds great.
Have a great day. Is Ron Hepp from Seeley Lake. Ron, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Commissioner Molnar.
Ron, can you spell
Can you
your
hear
last
me?
name? Yes, I can, loud and clear, Ron. Please spell your last name and state where you live. Do not give your personal address, and then speak as you feel free. Feel free to speak as you will.
What? Last name, Hepp, H-E-P-P. And I reside in Seeley Lake.
And what are your comments, Ron?
Thank you for the opportunity to voice my opinion on the ongoing dispute that I believe was instigated by Commissioner Fielder against Commission President Molnar. I believe the basis for the investigation was invented by Commissioner Fielder for political purposes that she is trying to keep covered up. Also, if she cannot handle another commissioner's comments, perhaps she has no business being a public service commissioner dealing with issues such as setting electricity rates. Doesn't Commissioner Fielder have better things to do, such as analyzing the merger between Northwestern Energy and Black Hills Corporation? Perhaps she will just rubber stamp this merger as she has approved every Northwestern Energy rate increase request. I'd say Commissioner Molnar and his experience would make him invaluable as he rightfully opposed the sale of Northwestern Energy to Australia's Babcock and Brown infrastructure. As Molnar is the only existing commissioner to deal with something of this magnitude. The public and ratepayers also have a right to know who is paying and how much for this investigation and Commissioner Fielder's attorney fees. I believe Commissioner Fielder personally should pay for all costs, including any attorney fees incurred by Commissioner Molnar. Commissioner Molnar was elected by his constituency to represent their interests. End this charade and get to work representing the ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. I don't see any more commenters for online. Are there any? Seeing none. Thank you to both commenters for your time. Are there any changes to our agenda? Sure.
Mr. President, would you back up to announcements for a second, please?
Certainly. Back to announcements.
Thank you. Mr. President, fellow commissioners, I would like to, it's been a couple of weeks ago, but I guess I would like to acknowledge the passing of Senator Dwayne Ankeny, an absolute giant in a lot of the world that we deal in here. And I guess I want to thank Commissioner Pinocci for allowing me to do this, because Senator Ankeny actually was from his district. But anyway, a friend all that truly knew him, and somebody that always had his community and the people of Montana's backs. And he's going to be a big void in the policy world. But anyway, my heart goes out to Carol and the rest of the family, and we lost a good one, Mr. President.
I think I'll chime in on that just a little bit here for those who don't know, and that'd be most of us, I think. Commissioner Dwayne Ankeny became very ill during the session, and Commissioner Wellborn stayed by his bedside the whole time. So I guess I'd wind that up with, and another minor goes home. Well, action item number 1, approval of the minutes for September 29th, 2025. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to approve minutes.
We have a motion to approve the minutes from September 29th, 2025. Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the minutes will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. It carries 4-0. So we move on to work session 2024.05.61, Montana Dakota Utilities, application for authority to establish increased rates for natural gas service, to consider approving a stipulation and settlement agreement and issuing a final order. Who on staff is the lead staffer? Mr. Fink.
Good afternoon, President, Commissioners. I will be presenting this today. We are happy to be bringing this in front of you today. And as you mentioned, this is for docket 2024.05.061, Montana Dakota Utilities, or MDU, natural gas revenue increase application. Before you today is a staff memorandum and draft final order, which were all circulated to you last week. I'll start with timelines and original parties' positions. On July 15th, 2024, MDU filed its application requesting an annual natural gas revenue increase of approximately 9.4 million, in which MDU states is necessary to allow it to recover its cost of service and provide an opportunity to earn a reasonable return on equity of 10.8% and an overall rate of return of 7.756%. MDU states the factors underlying its request primarily include investments made since its last rate case, including investments in distribution facilities to improve system safety and reliability, depreciation expense related to those assets, and increased operation and maintenance expenses. On August 21st, 2024, Montana Consumer Council petitioned to intervene, and on January 6th, filed intervener testimony supporting a revenue requirement increase of approximately 5.4 million. MCC's proposed revenue increase is based on its position that MDU states should allow an opportunity to earn an ROE of 8.9% and an ROR of 6.8%. On January 14th, 2025, the Commission issued Interim Order 7972C, authorizing MDU to temporarily increase its rates to recover an additional annual natural gas revenues of approximately 7.7 million. On April 3rd, 2025, the Commission received a stipulation that resolved all contested issues and agreed to an annual revenue increase of 7.3 million based on an ROE of 9.6%. The stipulation further details components of the revenue increase and revenue requirement allocation and rate design. Switching gears to staff's analysis. Staff's memorandum provides a summary of the application, intervener's position, the stipulation, and staff's analysis and recommendation. As previously mentioned, the stipulation would result in a revenue increase of 7.3 million and an ROE of 9.65%. Overall, staff conducted an independent analysis of the record evidence to find a range of reasonableness amongst the parties' positions. The low end of this range constitutes a 6.14 million revenue increase and an ROE of 9.17%. The high end of this range constitutes an 8.69 million increase and ROE of 10.14%. The low range was comprised by adopting a majority of MCC's proposed adjustments, and the high range was doing just the opposite, adopting a majority of MDU's original proposals. The stipulated revenue increase and ROE falls within the range of reasonableness. Staff notes that within the stipulation, all parties made significant concessions, and while staff does not agree nor disagree with the components of the revenue requirement presented in the stipulation, staff finds the stipulation as a whole is reasonable. It allows MDU a reasonable opportunity to recover its prudently incurred costs and an opportunity to earn a return on its investment. Moving now to the residential bill impact. The interim increase that took effect February 1st of this year increased the monthly bill of an average residential customer using 65 therms by $5.01 or 10.25%. According to the stipulation, the bill for a typical residential customer using 65 therms per month would increase by approximately $5.29 or 10%. From interim rates currently in effect, this would mean the residential customer would see an increase of approximately 28 cents per month. Lastly, let's talk about staff's recommendations. In your reading materials, you have a proposed order that incorporates staff's recommendations. Those recommendations include approving the stipulation. If approved, the stipulated revenue requirement of 7.3 million will be less than the interim revenue requirement of approximately 7.7 million, which was effective February 1st. Therefore, staff recommends MDU provide a compliance filing to issue refunds attributable to each customer class with supporting work papers, and that those refunds be dispersed to customers over a 5-month period ending March 31st, 2026. Staff further recommends that if MDU determines the refund for any class is de minimis, MDU should be allowed to disperse the refund in a one-time lump sum and thoroughly explain how it determined the refund was de minimis. Finally, staff recommends MDU make a future compliance filing no later than April 15th, 2026 that confirms all deserving customer classes received applicable refunds. In summary, staff recommends the Commission adopt the proposed order as its final order and authorize staff to make any non-substantive changes to the order as necessary. With me today on my left is Analyst Neil Templeton, and on my right is Staff Attorney Laura Wachowski and Analyst Tim Nerstad. And that is all that I have for you today. And we are available for questions.
Are any of the others at that table have any questions or have any comments for us? Seeing none, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone, Mr. President and members of the commission. I would just like to say that there will be a couple of minor changes regarding the tables because there was just some transposition errors. A number of people were working on these and things got mixed up twixt the ball and the cup, so to speak. And anyway, and one important one I want to point out, I'm not sure it's in the order. It's in the memorandum in, I believe, table 3. Table 3 in the memorandum. And it shows the proposed allocations by class for MDU, MCC, and the stipulated settlement. And I want to point out for the residential class, MDU is proposing a 44% increase, and MCC proposed a 19% increase. And they settled somewhat in the middle, and it says a 19.13% increase, but that's an error. It's a 27.3% increase. The MDU proposition was about 7.5 million, and they settled at 4.6 million. And MCC had proposed 3.2 million. Overall, when I first looked at this settlement, and for those of you, a settlement is essentially the same thing as a stipulation. It's that the stipulation involves the actual stipulation of rates and allocations and that. So the stipulation is contained in the settlement, so to speak. So I sometimes get confused with that. But when I first looked at this, I thought that MCC had done quite well and regarding their advocacy for the customers and, well, essentially the residential class. There wasn't much. MCC didn't take a position regarding the rate design of the other classes, although the allocations, it did take a position. But the residential class, I thought, came out very well here regarding MCC's advocacy, which there was only a 10% increase in the service charge, even though there was a 27% increase overall for the residential class. So the remainder is in the volumetric charge, which this commission and the Consumer Council have tended to favor a low customer charge up front and then a higher, putting the weight on the volumetric charge, which the commission's reasoning in the past has generally been that, for one thing, it benefits low-income households, that some of the data that we've been presented, at any rate, shows they tend to have smaller homes, and so they use less gas or less electricity. And also it provides an incentive for conservation. So I thought that although some of these numbers in the tables I need to look over a little bit, I thought that overall the stipulation reflects a fair and reasonable arm's length settlement between the parties, because MDU got nowhere near what they wanted to get and what they were proposing to get, and neither did MCC. They came in somewhere in the middle on just about every piece of this. So that would be, as far as the class allocations to class, and the rate designs within those classes. I thought this settlement was a reasonable outcome and determination of this case. Thank you. That's all I have today.
Thank you, Neil. Any other comments from staff table? Seeing none, are there questions from commissioners?
Neil answered my clarifying question.
Okay, well, you went like that. I thought your trigger finger was getting itchy, so. Commissioner, we'll start down at the end and work our way back. Commissioner Welborn.
Thank you, Mr. President. For Mr. Fink, would you clarify again the differential between what you're recommending and I believe you said it was actually less than what the Consumer Council was asking for in the settlement? Would you drill down on that just a little bit so I can understand better?
Certainly, Mr. President, Commissioner Wellborn. The settlement recommends a revenue requirement of 7.3 million, whereas the interim that was approved by this commission was a little more than 7.7 million, and it was an actual true difference of $434,746 on an annual basis. And so
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Commissioner Panochi.
Thank you, Mr. President. District number 1 has the lowest wages of any other district. So when there's a rate increase that's in front of us, I can get a lot of phone calls. And I do believe that building up infrastructure is important. But the ratepayers got a few questions that have come across my desk. Can any of you tell me if the price of natural gas is lower now than it was this time last year? That MDU pays a rate on?
Mr. President, Commissioner Panochi. One, right off, I'm not sure exactly what Northwestern's MDU's price of gas is. I do know they hedge about 30%, so it doesn't go. That's fixed price, and so it doesn't go directly up and down with the spot market, which changes, and they get their gas supply from different sources, some from Canada, a lot from the Dakotas, and some CIG, I believe. So, and two, I guess in the context of this proceeding, gas cost wasn't an issue. We're not really dealing with the gas cost. And I respect the question a lot, and I respect that customers' concern for this issue is that a lot of times the commission is expected to be in charge of all rates, and that we're basically kind of the last bastion between, the rapacious utilities and the fleecing of the customers. That's not really true. And it is with respect to the gas costs, they're managed on a tracking basis. So that the utility is essentially allowed to recover all of its gas costs, including the capacity costs that are necessary to transport gas from one state to another, from one region to another. And the utility earns no money on that. So there's really no incentive for the utility to stack up the prices. They could sometimes buy more prudently than other times. And I expect that they're doing their very best to keep prices down regarding that. But they do go up and down, and it does reflect on, and even though the commission authorizes those rates, it doesn't really have a great deal of discretion regarding those rates, because we've already decided that we're going to track them, and the utility is going to be able to recover all its costs unless they made some imprudent purchases, or in some instances in the past, on the electric side, there's been an outage, and then there's a question of replacement power costs and things like that. But typically, there's not a lot of discretion allowed in the trackers. And the market does go up and down, and it's been fairly low. I don't know that it's as low as it was at this time last year. It's been fairly low, and And we're really blessed, actually, to have the low gas prices that we do. Because when I came in here in 2010, they were not low, and they were coming off a very high period. And it was, I mean, $5 gas was considered a good buy. And now in Canada, the gas is regularly $1 to $2. And sometimes, I mean, I remember a period, I think it was a couple of years ago, where it was negative for some, momentarily. But, so, and I know that residential customers and the small customers are the ones you guys hear about from a lot regarding these rate increases. But I'd like to say one thing, that we have these cost of service analyses. Now, there's always discrimination when you're allocating cost to anyone, anywhere. Discrimination is probably one of the first things humans learn, which is that is X, that is Y. And you discriminate. You learn to see differences. Now, price discrimination used to be rampant 150 years ago, 120 years ago in the railroads, and that's why they started these commissions, is to prevent that price discrimination. So there's legitimate price discrimination and illegitimate price discrimination. But we have rate classes, residential, small commercial, large commercial, industrial. That's discrimination in itself. We've already separated them into classes, so we're discriminating. But some kinds of rate differences are considered legitimate and some aren't. Now, I say all that leading up to the fact that in my experience here, a little over 15 years, I don't think I've seen a cost of service study done according to standard metrics where residential customers were overpaying. Even the Consumer Council's witnesses usually come in with something saying maybe they're slightly overpay. I mean, that they're slightly underpaying and they should be increased a little bit more, but only gradually. But so in a case like this, where the residential customers do get a proportionately higher increase and not much higher than some of the other classes, you need to keep in mind that according to most of the analysts who look at this, in general throughout the industry, residential classes have been underpaying for decades. And they almost, I mean, it's standard for the residential class to underpay relative to its cost of service for obvious reasons, because they call people and they're the ones who don't have a voice except to speak through the commission. And some of the larger customers have a different kind of leverage. But so I would say tell your customers that yes, your costs are increasing, but the cost of everything is increasing. And the utilities costs are increasing, and we're legally obliged to allow them the opportunity to recover their prudently incurred costs. Now, if they're not prudently incurred, or they're trying to gold plate their infrastructure and put on overly expensive, investments to earn a return on, that's a different matter. But if they're prudently incurred investments, and I believe nobody contested in this case that the pipe and the compressor improvements they made, the city gate improvements, weren't reasonable and just taken in the context of providing safe and reliable service to their customers. So in that case, it's hard to, nobody wants to see their rates increase. I don't like to see the price of food increase, to go into the supermarket and beef is $10 a pound. I mean, for the less expensive cuts. And it's crazy, but I don't blame the beef producers. They have their own issues. They have their own constraints, and so does the utility. So I don't want to say just suck it up, but sometimes it's a hard world, and it's not all golden. And we do have increases, and we have to bear them. And I try to do it without complaining, but I generally fail at that matter. But that's all I have to say.
Further question?
Thank you, Mr. President. Neil, that was a great answer. Thank you. I plan to make the motion to accept staff recommendations. However, I've been asked a lot of questions. And I want to pass some of the questions on to you so that the ratepayer sees that, we're asking questions. The concern that they brought up is they feel, and they may be wrong, that the price of natural gas is lower than it was, so that should offset the cost of this. Now, that may not work, what's in front of you. MDU a few years ago asked for some infrastructure improvements in my district, and I approved them. And shortly after that, they had a major failure outside of Glasgow, which was an age system, so the timing was perfect. And this showed that it was a good vote for us to make improvements. But a question that they want me to ask is, we raise the rates, we make these improvements, will the rate stay in effect after the improvements are made, or will they discount the price after these improvements are done? What are your thoughts there?
President Molnar, Commissioner Panochi, when a utility makes an investment, that investment typically is put into rate base, where the utility is able to earn a return on that investment and a return of that investment, which is that ROE portion that I talked about earlier. And as those investments are depreciated out, those investments eventually fall off the books. However, the utility will recoup the expense of that investment for the depreciation period, amortization period in which that's set at.
Do you have an idea, in this case, how long that would take? That would be a question that they'd probably like me to ask. And that may be an answer you can't give me now, but in case you can, what are your thoughts?
President Molnar, Commissioner Panochi, I don't have a specific amortization period of like pipe investment. I don't have a direct specific answer for you. I could get one back to you
All
if
right.
you'd like.
Well, we talk about rate classes. Neil, I think you did a great job explaining that. But I'll tell you what's been brought to my attention. My retired senior citizens would like a rate class of their own. Is there any state that has a rate class for retired people who have a fixed income where, we increase the rates, but, their retirement doesn't increase? Is there such a rate class for retired senior citizens anywhere that you know of in the United States? And how difficult would it be to ask for one for retired seniors inside of Montana?
Thank you, Mr. President, Commissioner Panochi. I am not aware of any separate class for retired citizens, although I appreciate the sentiment that, as I was speaking earlier, of discrimination. When we separate ratepayers into classes, what we're looking at is their cost characteristics and their usage profiles, and what their demand is, the relation to their peak demand and their average use, and features like that. I don't know of anything that would separate retired citizens other than their income, their income profile, which is fixed, and maybe lower as costs increase if their pension or, is not COLA, cost of living adjusted. In that sense, I think that the way that this commission and other commissions try to deal with that is through programs that are meant that are available to certain ratepayers depending on income or other constraints, maybe, if they have disabilities or whatnot, and that is the way that we've typically dealt with that issue. It's not that the commissions aren't concerned about that, because obviously they are, but they typically don't try to resolve that problem through creating a separate class. Now, Tina Shorten or one of the consumer assistance ladies would probably have, or men would probably have, a much better answer for that regarding the programs that are available, but I'm not aware of one that's specifically targeted toward senior citizens.
I'm advising my seniors to turn to the legislative branch and talk to their legislators about maybe legislation and maybe see where that gets them. With that, Mr. President, thank you, and I'm ready to make a motion to accept staff.
We'll
recommendation.
accept the motion in just a second. Commissioner Wellborn flagged that he is interested in asking another question.
Thank you. In the dialogue between Mr. Templeton and Commissioner Pinocci, Neil, you alluded to something earlier in the cost of delivery versus the actual usage cost. Isn't there somewhat of an argument to be made that by what you're proposing here and lowering the delivery costs, that does kind of levelize things between the rate classes? In other words, if you use less and your delivery charge is a little bit less, you're actually paying less out of pocket, where the customers that are using more are going to be paying a little bit more under, does that, you're equalizing the rate, the class that's getting hit more. If they're paying a little bit less delivery charge, it is kind of a backdoor way of lowering their ultimate cost anyway, correct?
Mr. President and Commissioner Wellborn, I'm not sure exactly what you're saying. I was alluding earlier, I think, to having a low upfront monthly charge or daily charge, the customer charge, and then putting more weight on the delivery charge, which is what we've done here relative to what MDU proposed initially. Now, MCC proposed no change at all to the customer charge, that it remain at 30 cents a day, and that the delivery charge be increased to make up whatever increase in revenues were allocated to the residential class.
Okay.
Now, they stipulated a 33 cent per day customer charge. And so then the delivery charge has to make up the rest. But in the final rate, the customer charge increased from 30 to 33%, or a 10% increase. And the delivery charge per decatherm, per unit of use, increased 45%. This is for the residential class. So you're putting more weight on that delivery charge, that usage charge. So that means when you put more weight on the usage charge, the volumetric charge, you're kind of giving it more bang for the buck. So if you conserve a decatherm by, turning your thermostat down, not using it during the day, or better insulation or whatever, you gain more. You gain that per decatherm cost, which would be greater than if the usage charge was very low. But on the other hand, if you use a lot and you're not, and you're not thrifty in your use, it's going to punish you more. So that's, obviously it's kind of a trade-off. But the commission has traditionally opted for that lower upfront customer charge, kind of a buy-in charge, so to speak, right? Like the cover charge at a bar, and then a higher charge for your drinks, something like that. But one of the two primary reasons that I am aware of that it does that is, one, it protects the lower income customers who have who have lower usage, because then they don't have that higher upfront monthly buy-in charge. And two, it provides that incentive for conservation, like you're talking about. I don't know that it's a levelizing factor, but definitely you have the opportunity with a higher delivery charge you have more control over your bill, right?
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I have some questions. I'll save them for a moment. This is Commissioner Panocci's district. He has signaled that he would like to make a motion. Commissioner Panocci, what is your motion?
To accept staff recommendations. Thank you, Mr. President.
We have a motion to accept staff recommendation. Do I hear a second?
I second.
We have a motion and a second. We will have some discussion. I have a couple quick. I'm not quite sure about the raise the cover charge and lower the cost of a beer analogy. So, on say for example, page 4, you have the cash working capital, and as you read down through it, it doesn't mention resolution. On others, MCC and MDU and staff have come together on something. So on something like cash working capital, where there's been no resolution, and in the world of energy, it's not big money, but it's real money. It's, in the millions. Has staff then brought forward and put into their recommendation the winning argument, or how is that being handled? Who makes the final determination if there's no agreement?
President Molnar and Commissioners, this settlement is what we as staff, it's been known at the commission, it's called a black box settlement, and that is where the parties associated, in this case, the MCC and Montana Dakota, what is provided in the stipulation is the information that we have to make a recommendation on. And for your question in regards to the cash working capital and other adjustments that were brought forth by the Montana Consumer Council, that is where the stipulated revenue requirement is derived from. It's essentially some sort of compromise between the parties to have an outcome that is reasonable.
So you're saying all of the issues like cash working capital that are not stipulated to here are stipulated to as a general mixing together, and they've all agreed to the final outcome, though not necessarily to every issue.
President Molnar and Commissioners, if I'm understanding your question correctly, the stipulated revenue requirement here of 7.3 million, it's comprised of the adjustments made by the Montana Consumer Council and the original parties' positions of Montana Dakota. Now, other than what is stated in the stipulation, there are compromises or give and takes between each party to come to a fair and equitable outcome.
Okay. One other thing, and this is kind of like what Commissioner Panocci was alluding to. Back when I first came here and we were discussing this issue, I raised the question of Montana Dakota Resources had lost, I think, 53 million in their construction supply business, mainly gravel, and that's when they went back to a regulated model as opposed to being in the free market. And I was concerned because at the time, I'm sure it hasn't changed a lot, MDU's rate of return was like 0.15% or something rate of return, which is far below 8%. And my concern was that perhaps MDU Resources had siphoned money off to cover their losses and expected this to backfill. And I promised people at that time here publicly that I would check into it. And after many conversations with Will and several others, it's virtually impossible to do because even FERC looks at these things. And if you got, say, for example, $5 million, where did that come from? Well, we took it from MDU and gave it to MDU Resources. Nothing like that has surfaced. So I think that the accounting on this is straight up. Chagrined at the thought of black boxes and voting for one when I'm about to hit the rails running on another. So with that in mind, are there any other questions or comments from commissioners? Did you have one?
I just wanted to make a
Commissioner?
brief defense of my support of Commissioner Panocci's motion, if I may.
Please.
It'll be very brief. I mean, I think the fact that representatives of both MDU and the consumers, the fact that they agreed to the stipulation settlement, it looms large in my being persuaded to support Commissioner Panocci's motion. Significant concessions were made by both sides. All of this has been stated by Grant and by Neil. The revenue requirement increase agreed to in the stipulation falls within the range of reasonableness between the low end and high end of the revenue requirement and the return on equity. And so I greatly appreciate staff's fine work in this and Neil's bonus that he gave us. And I especially appreciate the reference under conclusions of law as to the compelling Hope and Bluefield U.S. Supreme Court cases that establish the legal standard for public utility rate setting by emphasizing the need for a fair rate of return on investment to ensure the utility's financial integrity and ability to attract capital while also protecting consumers from unreasonable rates. And that balance of interest is supported by the evidentiary record in this case, as talked about by Neil and Grant. The increased cost of doing business, as Neil talked about, for utility companies, it drives up rates. That increased cost of doing business is related to inflation, increased consumer demand, and everything that goes into maintaining reliability. So I vote for Commissioner Panocci's motion.
Thank you. Any further comments, whatever, before we take the vote? I think, matter of fact, I'll ask the four of you. Some things in here are black boxed. I'm sure that you understand what's in there, but I'm not positive. Are there any issues that any of you feel were not well vetted and that you could not defend at a later time? That perhaps you have reservations, maybe this is a bit premature, maybe it's the exact right timing and all issues have been looked at thoroughly. Is there any reservations about any of the issues that have been stipulated to or the issues that have been black boxed from any of the four?
Not for me, Mr. President Molnar.
I'll take roll call.
Not for me, President Mueller.
None for me as well, President.
I appreciate the need for a settlement between the parties when they want to come to an equitable solution, and they're perhaps worried about what the commission might do, and so they're kind of like fixing it in place. And when I first came here, I didn't like black boxes because I wanted to see the arguments resolved, and I've come to accept that maybe it's even a benefit that some of the arguments don't get resolved. I'm not sure that cost allocation and rate design arguments are ever going to be resolved, because they've certainly been going on since long before I came here, and we don't seem to be making a lot of progress. But that's kind of like the First Amendment. They're preserving their ability to argue in the future. Now, I might have resolved it differently if I was in charge. I will say that I'm not saying that I think it's perfect, but I don't have any reason to. These are the parties who have been determined to represent the interests that we have. And my position as an analyst on the commission is meager at best. I have no standing, so to speak. So I would just say that we don't come to resolution of these matters, and in a certain sense, we're denied satisfaction on that, but it allows the parties to raise the same issues and other issues beyond in the future. So
Mr. Templeton, do you feel that the numbers are defensible?
I think that the numbers, I think it's as in the context of just reasonable rates for customers and the utility providing safe and dependable service and being reasonably compensated for it. Yes, I do.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments before I call the question? I will say that my vote on this does not reflect my vote on the next one. It's still going to depend on is the settlement reasonable? In this case, 0 point anything rate of return is not proper. I think we're coming up with a defensible rate of return. I think it's a rate of return that is defensible in court. And because of that, I don't think it's going to court, and that's important. So with that in mind, we'll take roll call, starting with Commissioner Wellborn,
Aye.
Commissioner Panochi,
Aye.
Commissioner Bukacek,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Carries 4-0. Now we move on to, by the way, good job, guys. I was going through some old hearings, looking at them. This goes back a long ways, and you guys have been working on it for a long time, and your diligence is appreciated. So next, a rehash, 2025.08.059 Northwestern Energy Wildfire Mitigation Plan to reconsider vote on initiating a solicitation process for a technical master. Because there is a reconsideration, it cannot go forward without a motion from one who voted against this last time. Do I hear a motion? Commissioner Panochi.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will make a motion to allow staff to issue an invitation for bids for a technical master to advise us on Northwest Energy's fire remediation plan. I'd like to appoint Will Rosequist as staff, as lead, and Commissioner Molnar, President Molnar, as lead commissioner. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? I second. Is there any discussion on this issue? Does staff have anything to say? Okay, well, a lot of it's been said. Okay, I asked for,
A few things to say.
okay, please.
And if you're not going to make a presentation, if you could just let me know if I'm correct or not in this, because Commissioner Wellborn was not here last week, so he was excused. He missed a lot of this. So, and I know you'll correct me if I'm wrong. So there's a time crunch, and this is my understanding of the time crunch. PSC staff draft work session materials would need to be provided to the commission by November 6th. That's
President Molnar, Commissioner Bukacek, pursuant to the Blue Book or the policy manual, internal policy manual, yes, the draft work session materials would be circulated on November 6th for a November 18th work session.
okay. And so that would be our staff, and that's 4 weeks from today. And if this was voted in today, that we would have this technical master, it would take an estimated week for review by the State Procurement Board. Is that correct?
Mr. President, Commissioner Bukacek, that's a rough approximation that I used last week. I don't have like a firm or fixed period of time that's been given to me by the State Procurement Bureau. I know that the State Procurement Bureau has seen the same sort of draft invitation for bids that was circulated to the commission, and they've only pointed out one minor change that they would need to make to that. So it's possible that the invitation for bids could be reviewed by them and issued sooner than that, but that was kind of a rough approximation of what it might take.
Okay, and I was getting that from my review last week, so I took it as more firm than it actually is. So could it also be more than a week then?
President Molnar, Commissioner Bukacek, I suppose that's possible if they, for some reason, discovered a lot of issues that needed to be addressed, which might require us to come back to the commission in a future work session. If that were to happen, then it could take longer than a week.
Oh, potentially. And so then, and then after that, a week after they accepted it, let's say they did, then a week to open it up for bids. It would be open for bids for a week. Is that correct?
That's also a rough understanding of this process. Again, this is the first time we've used this kind of expedited process. So that's kind of what I gathered, but I can't necessarily guarantee that that's the specific amount of time.
Okay. Again, I thought that was more firm. So my next thing had to do with, that would give, if we picked a technical master, that would give them about 2 weeks to evaluate the plan. But it would give and take a half a week or so. And then that, if we chose a technical master, that review would approximately coincide with our staff's review. So this technical master wouldn't be looking over our staff's work. It would be looking over the plan by Northwestern. And then their review would come in at approximately the same time as staff's review. That's what I got from last week's meeting, if I'm understanding correctly.
President Molnar, Commissioner Bukacek, that is right. We attempted in this draft invitation for bids to align the time frame for when the technical master would provide its work products with the time frame that the staff would be circulating its recommendation so that the commission would have both sets of information available to it at the work session.
Okay, and then one more timeline. The commission, our deadline to render our opinion whether or not to approve Northwestern's plan is November 24th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So last week, and I'm doing this partly for Commissioner Wellborn's benefit since he was absent. And just correct me if I'm wrong, but there two different solicitation processes have been discussed in your email September 12th and another one the 24th and last week. And the RFP solicitation process for a technical master that would have a lot more, we'd be able to compare bids other than just cost. And that is off the table due to time constraints. I just want to say that. So we're left with the one remaining one, which is the quick lowest bidder option, since that other is off the table.
That's correct.
Okay, and so we're left with this lowest bidder process. And if my understanding, again, this is from a review from last week, if the lowest bidder fails to meet the bidder qualifications and scope of service, then we're done with the process. We can't look at anyone else. Is that correct? In this quick lowest bidder option?
President Molnar, Commissioner Bukacek, I'm not sure if that's totally correct. Again, it's a process I haven't been through before, but the invitation for bids will specify what the qualifications need to be in order to bid. And again, we can include a requirement for references. So I think the presumption is that all bidders would be qualified and that the commission would then pick the lowest bid, but that bidder should be qualified to do the work.
Okay, and the qualifications are quite steep, actually, in this invitation. The scope of services, that contractor has to evaluate whether the plan contains sufficient information to enable the PSC to determine whether the plan is in the public interest and reasonably balances the incremental costs of implementing the plan with the risk of a potential wildfire. That's C, and then E and F, they have to be able to point out deficiencies and then give an analysis and a recommendation to fix those deficiencies. And then the bidder qualifications, it's really quite strict. So I like this invitation as long as it was the analysts of it stuck to this. I think we'd be in fine shape, even if it was the quick low bidder. I'm a little bit concerned because the commissioner asked to analyze this. Last week it was Vice President Fielder who's had some experience with this, and now it's being changed to President Molnar, who had last week recommended a retired forester, somebody who had worked in fire mitigation from a forester standpoint, from the Forest Service standpoint, and had done that for 30 years. And I fought forest fires for multiple seasons, and I was all over the West, being flown around. And that's not the same. I mean, that would have to do with vegetation and that kind of thing in terms of fire mitigation from the Forest Service. But this says here, experience preparing or evaluating electric utility wildfire risk mitigation plans in the U.S., knowledge and experience evaluating the costs and benefits of wildfire risk mitigation alternatives available to electric utilities, including modifications to operational practices, vegetation management, infrastructure upgrades or modification, knowledge and experience with wildfire consequences models and wildfire risk indices, which I don't personally think a forester would have those qualifications. So provided we kept strictly to this scope of service and the bidder qualifications, I could vote yes for this. But under the circumstances for the commissioner to be evaluating it, I cannot. So with this lowest bidder, we don't have the option of picking a bidder that provides the best value for the price because we are simply looking at the lowest cost. We would potentially be able to find that best value for the price with an RFP type of process, but this is simply looking at the lowest bidder. So, and this process already up to this point has included deep study and discussion by our staff, and you consider our staff to be qualified. There's also been, DNRC and the Disaster and Emergency Service looked over the plan. They had no particular recommendations, so presumably it's acceptable to them. Our staff has been and will continue to evaluate the plan with vigorous deliberation, as they consistently do, because that's who you are. So I've already gone through the scope of services and bidder qualifications, which I think are great. So I guess I'll just give my very brief final argument against this. For added value over and above what the PSC staff is fully capable of would require a high level of qualifications to analyze and identify potential deficiencies and make recommendations on the strategies, programs, and methods of a utility that has done fire mitigation for roughly 20 years. Because of the time crunch, we missed our chance of hiring such a person through the RFP type process. Chances, in my opinion, are slim that the lowest bidder will have the expertise in emerging best practices for quantifying the cost and benefits of wildfire risk mitigation alternatives and other public interest considerations. Taking the shortcut on hiring a technical master for something this important, it would be costly and potentially of no significant added value at the cost of tens of thousands of taxpayer dollars, unnecessary cost to taxpayers. In my opinion, the cost-benefit ratio of this shortcut is just not there. I will be a no vote.
Commissioner Panocci in a second. Commissioner, you mentioned a 20 years of experience. Who were you referring to?
You talked about someone who had worked on fighting forest fires and analyzing fire mitigation for the Forest Service for 30 years, now retired, and has a buddy that's also retired and with the same kind of work. That's what I'm.
Where's the 20 years come from?
The 30 years. You were the one that said.
Oh, I thought you said 20. That's what threw me.
No, I said 30.
Okay. I apologize. Commissioner Panocci.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will, I got a question for you. According to my statistics, most fires that are caused by utilities are not in forested area. Most of them are in grasslands. And if you really look at the state of Montana, really most of it is not forested area, okay? But in the event of a lawsuit where it's a possibility they could involve the Public Service Commission, hiring a technical master, I think, helps us in the event of a lawsuit, because they may say, because we didn't hire a technical master, we have more liability, or perhaps more liability lies somewhere. By hiring a technical master, I think that we have a little insurance policy to make a good statement in the event of a lawsuit. We did our part by hiring a technical master. Do you believe hiring a technical master may actually pay for itself in just one lawsuit to be able to make the argument we hired one over we didn't hire one? What are your thoughts?
Mr. President, Commissioner Pinochi, I'm going to defer that to my colleague and legal staff, Pamela Snyder-Varnes, to answer that.
Commissioner Pinochi and President Molnar, commissioners, this issue has been vetted with respect to any liability of the commission in reviewing wildfire management plans under HB 490. The appropriate venue for that would be a closed session because it does involve confidential attorney-client privilege information. And you've been briefed on that thoroughly. And you should be aware of the conclusions of legal staff with respect to any liability exposure of the commission in reviewing these plans. So if you would like further discussion about these issues, certainly we can go over it again, but it is not appropriate here and in an open meeting, unfortunately. And I would also say that the commission's authority in reviewing wildfire mitigation plans under HB 490 is really quite limited, and the legislature has included language specific to any exposure of the commission for fulfilling its duties. And so that is evident on the face of the legislation, but to the extent there's any further discussion of that, it should be done in a closed session with legal counsel.
Mr. President, if I may,
Please.
I think that's fair advice coming from the staff attorney, but I have to look at my commitment to safe, reliable, and affordable. And a technical master really fits being safe. So I encourage this commission to support my motion because it helps meet one of the important factors of safe. Also, reliable. If we're able to make improvements to improve reliability and have less outages, then I think that fits our goal pretty well. A technical master, I think, could assist in that. And I do believe, after witnessing billions of dollars of lawsuits in the state of California, I do not want to be a commissioner that didn't support a technical master, because I think that might help with that point of view, because I could certainly see a lawsuit coming forward, and I wouldn't want it brought up that this commission didn't support a technical master. And let's talk about this date of November 24th. Do you see any possibility that we could make a change to that date, back it up to get us more time? Or this question should be asked publicly, which is why I'm doing it. Any thoughts there to back that date up?
Mr. President, Commissioner Pinochi, the November 24th date is the product of the language of House Bill 490, at least as we interpret it. It sets out very specific timeframes for the public comment period, and then once the public comment period ends, the period of time that the commission has to render its decision. So legally, and I'll again defer to my colleague to correct me, but legally under the statute, that's the commission's deadline. And I don't even know whether, for example, if the utility were to agree that it would allow us more time, whether they could legally do that. I guess all I can say is your non-attorney Regulatory Division Administrator, I have seen the commission not adhere to statutory timeframes in the past.
I think it was a fair question to ask, just in case somebody might say, why wasn't that asked? So it was asked. With that, Mr. President, I encourage everyone to support my motion. Thank you.
Any further, Commissioner Wellborn?
Thank you. A question for staff, if I may. So the criteria that Commissioner Bukasek laid out for hiring or procuring a technical master is pretty specific, pretty detailed, seems first blush fairly thorough. Are you comfortable with that criteria in hiring the right person? I mean, as far as kind of the benchmark?
President Molnar, Commissioner Wellborn, yes, I would say I'm fairly comfortable. I think the language is targeted at trying to solicit an entity that has experience, working for ideally a public utility commission in the western part of the United States to evaluate a public utilities wildfire mitigation plan. And we've tried to bring into those qualifications what would be necessary to help this commission in particular implement those portions of House Bill 490 that we need to determine in terms of, the correct balance or the reasonable balance between incremental costs and risk mitigation. So yes, I'm pretty comfortable with those qualifications to the extent we can get somebody with them.
Okay, thank you. And I think you actually, I forgot to throw in thorough, but I think your answer also covered that base, that it is a fairly thorough job description, if you will. So if we choose as a commission to do nothing, we know what the result is come November for the next, 3 years as laid out in 490. I mean, we don't have a technical master. I mean, if we choose to not do anything, then we just won't have a technical master hired, where if we move forward and that technical master has to meet this criteria, and if we can't find somebody for whatever reason, we're still no farther ahead or behind by not doing anything today. But if we do move forward with something, there's at least a chance that we could find a person that could cover the bases that you've laid out in the job description.
President Molnar, Commissioner Wellborn, let me say this, a couple of things. If you move forward today, you're correct. There is a chance that you will get a technical master with the qualifications that we've laid out here. I have been in contact with 3 firms that have indicated that they would be prepared to bid on this invitation for bids. That's not to say that once we look at those bids, we're completely satisfied, and you have the option to check their references. And if you don't want to go forward, you don't have to go forward. So you're not necessarily locked into something if you do issue this invitation for bids. The other thing I guess I would say is, we were appropriated funds to retain a technical master in both fiscal year 2026 and fiscal year 2027. For clarification, I think this is our opportunity to get a technical master to weigh in on Northwestern's wildfire mitigation plan that's before you now. As I read the statute anyway, the next time they would file a wildfire plan that the commission is required to review would be 3 years from now. And between now and 3 years, they would file annual reports with the commission, kind of explaining how they've achieved what was in their wildfire plan that's before you now. I think that gets at all of the points of your question, but let me know if I missed anything.
No, I think so. And then one final question, Mr.
Please.
President. So there's, hypothetically, if we're able to find the right firm and move forward with that, and over the, prior to the next filing being made, the fire mitigation plan being filed, that we learn that it might take just a little bit different expertise or whatever, that there might be a better fit or a different, there's nothing, we're not locked into any long-term contract or obligation. So, I mean, we've got the ability to tailor it to everybody's needs better down the road should we need to, as far as a different firm or a different kind of, if things come up that we need a little bit different expertise, that we've got the ability to do that, and we're not locked into having a bad fit or, right size for the time.
President Molnar, Commissioner Wellborn, that's correct. You're not locked into the technical master that you may retain this time around if you do. And beyond that, I would say that over the next 3 years, we'll be able to go through the rulemaking process, which is envisioned in House Bill 490, and be in a much better position next time around to do the full RFP process for retaining a consultant.
Thank you.
Did you have something? Follow up from Commissioner Bukacek?
First, I just wanted to, and Jeffrey, you've probably, or Commissioner Wellborn, you've probably seen this, but this is House Bill 490, Section 2, parentheses 10. Nothing in this section may be construed to create a new liability basis for claim or separate legal cause of action arising from the review or approval of a wildfire mitigation when none would exist otherwise. So I just think that's important. And I have a question for Commissioner Pinocci. Could you restate your motion? May I hear it again?
I will make the motion to allow staff to issue the invitation for bids for a technical master to advise us on Northwest Energy's fire mitigation plan and appoint Will Roquest as staff lead and Commissioner President Molnar as lead commissioner.
And what would the lead commissioner, what would that entail? Let's say if Will and the lead commissioner had a difference of opinion about something, what would that look like?
I would ask President Molnar to answer that. Thank you.
Seeing so that's a hypothetical, I will answer it pretty much the way it was answered last time we discussed this in the Bollinger Room, which is that the technical master and staff would work in tandem. And I, as lead commissioner, would have no greater access to that than any commissioner would. Yourself, Commissioner Pinocci, Commissioner Fielder. And if there's a disagreement, I'm going to have to assume that it's handled like any other disagreement. And the technical master would say, this is what I believe. And you come to an agreement at some point. You don't just walk away.
I'm asking about a difference of opinion, let's say, between you and Will in terms of the qualifications.
We don't have that right now because we've agreed that's what's been written out. So the hypothetical doesn't match reality.
I have a question for Mr. Rosequist. Would you feel comfortable doing the vetting yourself? If I made an amendment, that it be yours and then you would present it to us and maybe have a point, Commissioner?
Well, Mr. President, Commissioner Bukacek, I believe what I discussed at last week's business meeting was that the way this process normally works is once the staff has reviewed bids, and determined in an RFP process anyway, um, who they think should be the consultant, that's brought to the commission for the commission's decision. And I envisioned the same process here, even though it's limited to that one factor. I would feel more comfortable having, coming back to the commission saying, these were the results. This is the firm that had the lowest bid. We checked the references. This is what we heard. But that the commission would make the final decision as to whether or not we're going to proceed at that point.
Correct. My understanding has never been anything but that it would come back to the commission. I understand that. But in the process of working with the lead commissioner, let's just say hypothetical that you read the qualifications. I mean, this scope of services and bidder qualifications is great. And if you were to look at that and the lowest bidder had these qualifications, I would feel comfortable voting for that. Another person, if the lead commissioner, for instance, who thought that at 30 years working for the Forest Service would satisfy the scope of services and bidder qualifications, even though he had them, what if he disagreed with you on that? Would we still?
Well, Mr. President, Commissioner Bukacek, that would come out at the work session. If there was a disagreement between myself and President Molnar on whether or not to proceed with the retention of the lowest cost bidder, I would give you my advice, and President Molnar might have a different perspective, and then it would be the commission's decision on where to go from there. But I believe that would all be on the table if there was a disagreement between the two of us.
And do you think there's great value in having a lead commissioner versus just you looking it over with staff and then presenting it to us or talking to us individually?
President Molnar, Commissioner Bukacek, I'm not sure I have a strong opinion one way or another. Ultimately, it's going to come before the commission. I think, the work session materials would likely have the information that we receive from the lowest cost bidder. And in a way, I think that each of the commissioners could make their own decision. I guess the only potential information I could see kind of being exclusive to myself and President Molnar, if that's how it goes, is, what we hear from the references that get checked or something like that, where we're on a call with the references, and so we get to hear what they say and ask the questions. But that could be summarized for the commission at the business meeting. So I don't know whether it makes a huge difference or not. That's kind of where it was going at the last business meeting. As you indicated in your comments, there was going to be a commissioner involved in the process. So I think that's really a call for the commission, which way it wants to go there.
And I voted against it last week, and I would vote against it this week unless there was an amendment passed. May I make a request for an amendment?
Really?
I
believe this would be an alternative motion, not an amendment.
I'm not sure. Because I would be asking for the same as what Commissioner Pinocci asked for, allowing staff to issue an invitation with Will Rosequist as the advisor on that himself, without a commissioner.
Well, then I believe you'd make the same motion down to that point, and then stick in what you think would be more appropriate.
Okay, and that would be my alternate motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? I'll discuss it. During the entire time that nothing has happened, I've been working with Lucas. I've worked with Will. And because of the extremely short time period for the commission through a lead commissioner, which just means the commission's involved, you could still go and talk and check or whatever. I don't think it's any different than when we were working with hiring chief legal. We'll soon be working with an ED. So anybody read the applications and you go in prepared. We have a very short period of time. I don't think we would want to come up short and wind up with a squabble at the last minute. That's what happened last time, and now we've burned a week. So that's my comment on it. Any further comment? Sure.
I see no added value to having a lead commissioner, and in this case, I think it would be a detriment in this particular case. And I think this is important to all of us, and I think we would be happy to engage with Will in discussions.
Seeing no further comment or questions, the question is called. All those in favor of Commissioner Bukacek's motion say aye.
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 Those opposed, aye. Motion fails. So with that, we have a motion. It's been seconded. I have a few comments. I'm often amazed at the tortured path some of our discussions take, and that would be this one. Being somewhat a student of what happened in California, what Northwestern characterized as, they just allocated the bill. All of those were jury trials. All of them went to gross negligence, which included their commission, that included the utilities. Money was allocated for transmission upgrades, didn't get spent. That was number one. And the transmission was falling down, causing sparks and causing fires, and they finally had a really, really big one. It was gross negligence. The comment that this does not create any new liability. Gross negligence has been around for a long time. If we have a fire anywhere near the campfire fire, the lawyers will fill the skies getting here when the smoke clears. And the question will be, did you hire a technical master that could have foreseen this going wrong? Well, no. Why not? Tight time frame. Therefore, we didn't do anything. If you had done something, might that technical master have pointed out a deficiency and this could have been prevented? Well, I suppose so. That's gross negligence. Dead people. Haystacks that are gone. Homes that can't be replaced because insurance won't cover it. That's what we'd be involved in. Our learned attorney is absolutely correct. Everything she said in the brief on liability, I believe is correct. However, it is not our job to only protect ourselves. We also protect the consumer, even if they're not a Northwestern customer. If we can prevent a fire 5 years from now, because the technical master said, what's missing in your plan, Northwestern, is fill in the blank. And we say, we'd like to see you moderate that and include this. We've done our job. We didn't just accept what they said. If he finds nothing and he says, this is great, we've done our job. If we don't hire one and just shift that risk to consumers and landowners, we have failed at our job. If somehow, through gross negligence, we were to lose a lawsuit, the Department of Administration, using taxpayer money instead of ratepayer money, will pay it. That is not a good argument for doing nothing. I think that sitting here during the work session, Mr. Merkel was the lead person from Northwestern on this issue, may still be, I have no idea. He admitted he had no experience, but as a wise man, he learned a lot. I learned to trust his opinion. We don't have a Mr. Merkel here. And at every question last time, I re-listened to the tape last night and again this morning, the turn of every question of would we benefit from a technical master? Will a third set of eyes help? If we get stuck on a question It'd be nice to have a technical master to ask, is there a solution to the problem that we can recommend? Every answer was the technical master would be of benefit. I argue they're benefit to us in a minor way, in a major way to the people of Montana. If a fire can be caught before it becomes a real blazer, or if it doesn't start at all, or if a certain kind of transmission line was in a certain place, perhaps not everywhere, but in a certain place, because the commissioner had a good idea. All of these things are what lead to good outcomes. Sticking our head in the sand is not one of those. It was said that we would have a high level of expertise and great vigor in pursuing this. We have no level of expertise, and no amount of vigor can overwrite that. I would today, I believe Will said that the Procurement Bureau had one little change. I will carry whatever he writes down with that one little change to the Procurement Bureau and hand deliver it and say, we're on a extremely tight time frame. Please don't leave this in your inbox. Please don't let it stay in somebody else's inbox. Can you please turn this around right away and save 4 or 5 days? That is being prudent. Hoping they get it done in time is not. So I don't want to be hit with gross negligence. I don't want to test my theory. I don't want to bet on the future. I want to do the prudent thing and hire a person that may be able to help us, and especially Northwestern, understand that there's one more idea out there that perhaps you can consider. Whether that comes from a former Forest Service employee of 30 years, which is not what I said, a former Forest Service employee in fire mitigation for 30 years. Wherever that one good idea comes from, or the statement that they've done a good job, I have nothing to offer. We owe it to the people of Montana to try to get it done in the time frame. And that's why I called for this reconsideration.
May I ask Pam a question?
No. Commissioner. No, we'll let Commissioner Bukacek speak. And watching quite a few films this morning on similar issues. Chairman Brown said it really isn't about a give and take, give and take, give and take, give and take every time, but he allowed you to speak. And everybody here bides their time and tries to get said what needs to be said and not argue every point. But I will give you the courtesy of your statement. I don't believe there's any others. After that, if none come up, I will call the question.
So House Bill 490, it eliminated strict liability, which in California, the utility companies can be sued whether they are considered to be negligent or not. And so that was removed with House Bill 490. That was one of the main points of House Bill 490 is that it eliminated that. That means, but for gross negligence, the utility can still be sued. And a plan that's lined out and discussed, somebody could still have gross negligence, even if the discussion and the way it was lined out is perfect. There could still be a part that is gross negligence that we wouldn't necessarily pick up in a plan. So my question for you is, for gross negligence, a utility can still be sued in Montana, correct?
President Molnar, Commissioner Bukacek, anybody can be sued
For anything.
And certainly when people are looking for someone to blame, they'll sue everybody, including the governor, the judge, the commission. Question is whether they ultimately are found liable. And you've been briefed on that issue. With respect to House Bill 490 and the utilities, what it does is remove strict liability for utilities, codify the liability standards to more or less negligence standards, but It does firm up liability standards for utilities, not the commission, if they prepare a wildfire mitigation plan and that plan is approved. So when you talk about liability here, you got to look at two different potential defendants or types. And House Bill 490 addresses liability of utilities. With respect to the liability of a governmental entity, those are longstanding common law and, statutory standards. I happen to have some experience with that, but I can say that certainly people will sue. Question is whether the entity will be found liable. And so with respect to gross negligence versus strict liability of a commission, that has been briefed to the commission and not appropriate for a discussion here again, unfortunately. And I hope I've answered your questions.
So thank you. And thank you for all the work you did during that session on this bill. You did a lot of work.
Commissioner Wellborn, you had a question or comment?
I do. Thank you, Mr. President. Is there anything in the process as laid out in this motion that would, is there an instrument in this process that maybe perhaps we could be individually briefed by staff on a weekly or so basis as this process is moving forward, that if there is something, and I don't foresee this happening, but if there was a disagreement, if there was a disagreement in principle with how we are hiring or procuring this person, that we could maybe get it to an out-of-cycle work session sooner rather than later and get that piece of it resolved, so that the lead commissioner and the staff can move this forward in a timely basis. Is there anything that precludes us from being able to do that? And if not, is that something that you're committed to helping further along to maybe get this motion passed today?
I don't see anything that would preclude an out of cycle work session, Commissioner.
So we would have the ability of, something comes up that might require the full commission's participation to get that element resolved so we can move on. That's something that could be done.
I don't see anything that would preclude it. What you're looking at here is just practicalities of significant time constraints.
Okay. Yep.
That's the limiting factor more than legalities.
Well, and I understand there's a little bit of the time constraint does kind of necessitate a leap of faith, and I'm just trying to come up with something that might work for everybody in the room to whip this horse along a little bit. So thank you.
This was your motion. I'll entertain a motion of closure in about a moment. Just put a fine point on it. Auto-cycle work session can be called by the president on a time-constrained item. I believe this to be a time-constrained item. I think we could call that anytime we wanted to call it. We need 48 hours notice, which I wish we didn't have that because of the time constraint, but that's what it is. With that in mind, so far as will it go to court, I think that you're exactly correct. The Constitution is clear.
Could you clarify, Mr. President, that out-of-cycle work session, does it have to be called by the president, or could it be called by any member of the commission?
That's what it says in the internal policy manual. It has to be time constraint. That's the only criterion. And I don't think anybody would have any problem doing that. I'm not quite sure. I worked on this a little bit ago on the 48 hours. Is that 48 hours or 48 business hour days or whatever? I don't care if we meet on Sunday afternoon to get this thing passed. I'll call it. With that in mind, the Constitution is clear. Any case in controversy may be heard by the courts. And if they say this is gross negligence, the courts will say, well, that's out. And we say, no, it isn't. You have a case in controversy, and away we go. So with that in mind, seeing no other comments or questions.
Mr. President, real quick, I wanted to clarify that the motion allows for slight modifications to the invitation for bids, the draft invitation for bids that was in your work session materials, because, as I mentioned, the State Procurement Bureau has something that they'd like to change in it. We talked last week about including a requirement that the bidders provide references that can be checked, and things may come up from State Procurement Bureau that I haven't anticipated. So as long as it's understood that the motion allows for some of those changes before the invitation for bids is
Acknowledge
issued.
this is like all others, minor edits, et cetera, are always more than welcome because they make a good product better. With that in mind, do I hear a motion for closure?
Question.
The question's been called. All those in favor will signify by voting aye.
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 We have, and are there any in opposition?
I vote no.
The motion carries 3-1. Will, if you can make your modification, let me know when it's ready. And I'll call over there and I'll talk to the head guy and see if he's got a moment. Thank you. So with that in mind, Commissioner Bukacek just thanks staff. And I've been in this one little fight now for 4 or 5 months, and there's never been a time that after talking to Lucas, that Lucas and I or Lucas didn't go out and talk to Will. His door is always open. It used to be when I knocked on it, he would smile and say, come in. Now he just groans and looks down, but I always go in. And I appreciate our legal staff to hear a challenge or yeah, but or whatever. It's never easy, and you always take it with such grace, and I so appreciate you. Thank you very much. So, are there any announcements to advise the public of any upcoming meetings or special PSC events the public should be reminded about? Seeing none. The next business meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, October 14th, 2025. That concludes this meeting. Seeing no further business to come before the commission. For the record, the time is 3:17 p.m. and the day is October 7th, 2025. This meeting is adjourned.